You are there right now. Close your eyes and let the darkness take you. The day is October 30th, 1503. The place is the absolute epicenter of the Christian world, the Vatican. You are standing within the cold stone walls of the Apostolic Palace. Can you feel how heavy the air is? It presses against your chest, thick and suffocating. It is as if, instead of oxygen, you are breathing in centuries of secrets, whispered conspiracies, and sins that have seeped into the very mortar of these walls. Outside, the eternal city of Rome sleeps under a fitful autumn moon. But here, inside, time seems to have stopped completely. The marble floor beneath your feet is ice cold, sending a chill up your spine that has nothing to do with the temperature. But the real shiver, the one that makes your hair stand on end, comes not from the stone, but from what you are witnessing. You look up, straining your neck to see those magnificent vaulted ceilings, the holy frescoes depicting the judgment of God, the mercy of Christ, and the purity of heaven. The paint is still vibrant, the gold leaf shimmering in the candlelight. Then, you lower your eyes, and in that terrifying instant, you face a scene where the sacred and the cursed blend together in a way that defies sanity. 50 women, on the floor. They are not wearing a single thread of clothing. Their skin is pale against the dark, veined marble. They are crawling, moving on their hands and knees, scrambling, twisting, as if they were animals in a barn rather than human beings in a palace. The sound of their skin sliding against the stone mixes with the low, guttural laughter echoing from the high tables. And right across from them, presiding over this madness like a dark king, sits that man, Pope Alexander VI. Look at his face. There is neither shame nor regret in his eyes. There is only pure, unfiltered, almost gluttonous pleasure. Beside him stands his son, the fearsome Cesare Borgia. He is motionless, his hand resting near his dagger. His eyes are as cold as a reptile's, watching the scene not with joy, but with a clinical, predatory detachment. Cardinals, bishops, the princes of the church, they are all there, surrounding you. Some are frozen, their faces pale masks of terror, clutching their crucifixes as if they could ward off the devil himself. Others, the younger ones, the ambitious ones, are joining in, cheering, their faces flushed with wine and hysteria. What is happening here tonight is of the kind that centuries later will make hardened historians' hands tremble as they dip their quills into ink to write it down. But history books are distant. You are there right now. You can smell the spilled wine, the sweat, the burning wax, and this grotesque display is only the beginning. What you will witness in the later hours of this night will be the precise moment where human dignity is extinguished, and the reign of pure, unadulterated power begins. This is the face of history that is never written in school textbooks. This is the place where polite silence ends and the screams begin. This is the place where whispers turn into a deafening roar. Welcome. If the truths hiding in the deepest shadows of the past draw you in, if you are brave enough to look where others look away, you are in the right place. Subscribe to Whispered History right now and hit the like button. Do it. Because when this story ends, you will want to unsee what you have seen, but you won't be able to. The only way to process it is to walk through it with us. And now I ask you, as we stand on the precipice of this nightmare, from which corner of the world are you witnessing this dark banquet? State your location in the comments below. Let us see how far the whispers of the Vatican have spread across the globe. If you are ready, steady your nerves. Take a deep breath. The heavy iron doors are closing. We begin. Immerse yourself in the autumn of 1503. The bells of St. Peter's Basilica are ringing across the 7 hills of Rome, their metallic clangor echoing through the winding streets. But listen closely. Do these bells bring tidings of joy? or are they tolling for a disaster? No one in the city is sure. The news spreads like a fever through the marketplaces and taverns. The Pope's daughter, the infamous Lucrezia Borgia, is to marry for the third time. To the uninitiated, it might seem like an ordinary royal marriage announcement, a cause for celebration. But you know the truth. You know the dark history that clings to this family like a shroud. Lucrezia is barely in her early 20s, a girl who should be full of life, yet she is a woman who has already left the wreckage of two husbands behind her in a trail of blood. Remember her first husband, Giovanni Sforza? He had to flee Rome in the dead of night, riding until his horse collapsed just to save his life from her family. Remember her second husband, the handsome Alfonso of Naples? He was strangled on the very steps of the Vatican, his life squeezed out of him by a mercenary's cord. Every rumour, every whisper in Italy pointed to one man as the architect of these tragedies, Lucrezia's brother Cesare Borgia. Now the stage is set for a new victim, Alfonso d'Este, the young, proud heir to the Duke of Ferrara. To the rest of Italy, to the foreign courts observing from afar, this marriage looks like a massive political victory, a brilliant alliance. But for Alfonso, the reality is terrifyingly different. Put yourself in his shoes for a moment. Feel the cold sweat of realization. You are about to become a son-in-law to the Borgia family, the seven-headed dragon of Christendom. Is this a wedding invitation, or is it a silent, gilded death warrant? Alfonso is painfully aware of the danger. Like every noble in Italy, he knows the grim rule. Those who sit at the Borgia's table rarely leave that table alive. He tried to run. He tried every trick in the book. Diplomatic excuses, envoys sent with apologies, endless delays. He pleaded with his father. But Pope Alexander VI's will is not a request. It is a force of nature that accepts no refusal. The message sent from the Vatican to the court of Ferrara was clear, brutal, and short. Either accept this marriage, or be destroyed. Picture the scene that forced his hand. Cesare Borgia's mercenary armies are gathering at the border of Ferrara, their armor glinting in the sun. The threat of excommunication, eternal damnation, and the loss of all legal rights is breathing down your neck. To resist means the end not just for you, but for your entire family, your entire ancient dynasty. The Duke of Ferrara, Alfonso's father, looked at the chessboard and realized that the only way to survive was total surrender. And so, with a heavy heart, he sacrificed his son. He sent him to that inevitable end, to the maw of the wolf, to Rome. It is December when you finally enter Rome. You're riding by Alfonso d'Este's side. The journey has worn you down to the bone. The frozen mountain passes of the Apennines and the muddy, bandit-ridden roads are finally behind you. But as you crest the hill and see the Vatican rising before you, your physical fatigue is instantly replaced by another, sharper feeling. Pure, primal fear. The Vatican of that time is not the polished museum of faith it is today. It is a fortress. It is a construction site of ambition. Half-finished scaffolds jut out like ribs, and the massive stone walls loom over the city, half-lit by flickering torchlight, looking like a giant beast. It does not look like the heart of Christianity, the seat of God's mercy. It looks like a dungeon preparing to swallow those who dare to enter its gates. When you step inside, the sensory overload is immediate. The smell of incense mixes with the metallic tang of old blood and the sweetness of rotting fruit. The magnificence that welcomes you is dizzying. Pope Alexander sits on his throne, draped in robes that shine like molten gold in the firelight. He is an imposing figure, fleshy and jovial, yet with eyes that miss nothing. And Cesare. Cesare is beside him. He does not speak. He is motionless, like a statue carved from black marble. He just watches. Cesare is only 26 years old, but looking at him, you see a soul that has aged 1,000 years in darkness. You can catch that specific expression in his eyes. There is no mercy there, only calculation. When he looks at Alfonso, he sees not a guest, not a brother-in-law, but a possession. a toy. A silent threat hangs in the air, heavy as smoke, saying, "You belong to us now. Your life is ours to give or to take." Days turn into weeks. Feasts, hunting parties, grand receptions. From the outside, everything looks like a celebration of joy, but you are observant. You notice the cracks in the facade. You see the fleeting, cruel glances Cesare throws at Alfonso while drawing his bow at hunting parties, aiming just a little too close for comfort, as if every stag he brings down is a visual warning to Alfonso. This could be you. At the banquets, you hear the jokes the Pope makes about the tragic, violent ends of Lucrezia's former husbands. He chuckles as he tells the stories. The court laughs with him, but this is not a joyful laugh. It is a nervous, high-pitched laughter masked by abject fear. No one wants to be the one who didn't laugh at the Pope's joke. Alfonso is living inside a golden cage. At night, he sleeps in opulent rooms in the Vatican, but outside his door, the heavy boots of the Pope's Swiss guard pace back and forth. He is protected, yes, but he is also a prisoner. He tries to sleep, but he cannot, because he knows, and you know, this is not a wedding. This is a conquest. This is the breaking of the Este family's pride, a public humiliation designed to intimidate every noble family in Italy. The message is broadcast loud and clear. Our will crushes even the most deep-rooted dynasties. And the real plan, the climax of this psychological torture, is being prepared in the bowels of the Vatican, behind double-locked doors. Cesare and his father are planning a feast for the wedding night that is so depraved, so blasphemous, that even the most immoral, hardened criminals of Rome wouldn't dare whisper it in the confessionals. The evening of October 30th has arrived. The sun sets over Rome, bleeding red across the sky, and the light leaking out from the windows of the Apostolic Palace flickers like the harbinger of an approaching storm. You are inside the great hall now. The room is a masterpiece of art, adorned with frescoes from the brush of the great Pinturicchio. Stories of saints, martyrs, and the Virgin Mary are depicted on the walls in vivid colours. But tonight, those painted saints will look down upon a scene that mocks everything they stood for. A completely different story will be written before their silent, painted eyes. The tables are arranged in a long horseshoe, decked with a richness beyond your wildest imagination. Silver platters groan under the weight of roasted wild boars with apples in their mouths. Pheasants served with their colourful feathers reattached. Mountains of exotic fruits and marzipan sculptures. The wine. The wine flows like a river. It is the dark, heavy red wine from Italy's best vineyards, pouring from golden goblets, dripping onto the white tablecloths like splashes of fresh blood. Look around the room. Who isn't here? Cardinals in their scarlet robes, Roman nobles in velvet doublets, foreign envoys from Ferrara, trying to put on a brave face. They are all dressed in their finest clothes, dripping in jewels. But look closely at their faces. Forget the clothes. Look at the eyes. Can you see the tension behind those masks? Those polite, frozen smiles? There is a static electricity in the air. Whispers are cut short when Cesare walks by. Eyes are averted. Hands grip wine goblets a little too tightly. Alfonso and Lucrezia are sitting at the head table, elevated above the rest. Lucrezia is wearing a gown of shimmering silk, embroidered with real gold thread. Her hair is a cascade of gold, braided with priceless pearls. She is beautiful, yes, but it is the beauty of a porcelain doll. Look at her eyes. There is no bridal excitement, no hope, no light. There is only the vast, deep emptiness of a victim who has dissociated from reality. She is a Borgia. She knows her father and her brother better than anyone. She senses, with the instinct of a survivor, that the air has changed. She knows this night will not end with a toast and a prayer. As the night progresses, the music shifts from gentle lutes to something more rhythmic, more primal. Pope Alexander, his face flushed red under the influence of heavy wine, becomes even more cheerful. His voice booms across the hall, drowning out conversations. And then, The expected moment arrives. Cesare slowly rises from his seat. He doesn't bang the table. He doesn't shout. He simply makes a single, subtle nod of his head. The sound you hear at that moment is the sound of finality. The massive, heavy wooden doors of the hall slam shut. Boom! The sound echoes off the vaulted ceiling. The Swiss guards, with their halberds and swords, take their places in front of the doors. You hear the heavy iron bolts sliding into place. Clack, clack. There is no way out now. The air leaves the room. Everyone in this hall, prince, priest, and servant, is now a prisoner of the Borgias. The boundary between the outside world and this room has been severed. The laws of God and man no longer apply here. Only the Borgias' whims remain. At Cesare's signal, the side doors creak open. And then they enter. 50 women. These are not common streetwalkers. These are Rome's most elite, educated courtesans. Women who know poetry, music, and politics. Women who frequent the private chambers of the most powerful men in the city. They enter dressed in heavy velvets and flowing silks, their necklaces sparkling in the candlelight. But even they look terrified. They cast nervous glances at the guards. They too know that disobeying the Pope's order in this city is a death sentence. First, a heavy silence falls over the hall. The chewing stops. The music stops. Then Pope Alexander smiles, a wide, beatific smile, as if he is unveiling a holy relic. And he gives the command that shatters the sanctity of the room. Undress. You are in the middle of a palace built for prayer, under the roof of the Vicar of Christ, and you watch as 50 women with trembling hands undo their laces and buttons. You watch them drop those expensive fabrics to the floor. Can you hear the soft rustle the silks make as they pile up on the marble? It is a soft sound, but in the silence, it screams. Now, 50 naked women stand shivering in the drafty hall. Some cardinals turn their heads, crossing themselves rapidly, whispering prayers to protect their souls. Others lean forward, their eyes wide, blinking not once. Holiness and sin are now sharing the same oxygen. The saints on the walls seem to weep in the flickering shadows. But the Pope is not satisfied yet. This is just the prologue. Servants enter from the shadows, carrying heavy wicker baskets. The baskets are full to the brim with chestnuts. Hard, dark chestnuts. And then, with a sweep of their arms, they scatter those thousands of chestnuts onto the floor. They roll across that polished, slippery marble. The sound is deafening, a chaotic clattering, like hail hitting a tin roof, echoing like thunder in the silence of the hall. Clack, clack, clack. A new order rings out. Collect them. The naked women, forced by fear and the threat of the guards' swords, drop to their hands and knees. They begin to crawl. They move between the legs of the seated cardinals and nobles, scrambling to collect the chestnuts. These women, who once held court in Rome's most elegant salons, are now transformed into creatures gathering bait thrown on the ground. To degrade them further, prizes are announced for the men. Whoever mates with the most women, whoever collects the most chestnuts. Rewards of silk cloaks, gold jewelry, and boots are promised. Imagine you are standing there, watching this. Naked bodies moving amongst the heavy red robes of the church princes. Grotesque shadows, twisted and elongated, are cast on the holy walls by the flickering light of the candelabras. It looks like a painting by Hieronymus Bosch come to life. And look up. Look at the high platform. The Pope and Cesare are sitting there. They are not horrified. They are laughing. They are pointing fingers, placing bets on the women, cheering as if they were watching a horse race. The leader of Christianity is acting like a common brothel keeper in his own palace at his own daughter's wedding feast. Now, look at Alfonso. His face is drained of all color, pale as a corpse. This is his wedding. This is the feast given in his honor. But in reality, this is a ceremony where his honor is being systematically dismantled and trampled underfoot. His wife, Lucrezia, is right beside him. She has turned to stone. Her tears have dried up hours ago. Her gaze has become dull and unfocused. Her hands are clenched so tight in her lap that her knuckles are bone white. In that moment, try to feel what Lucrezia is feeling. While hearing her father's raucous laughter echoing off the ceiling, she must be wishing for the floor to open up and swallow her whole. She must be wishing for her soul to detach from her body and fly far, far away from this room. Midnight passes. The heavy bells of the Vatican toll 12 times, vibrating through the floor. The scene has devolved into chaos. The chestnuts on the floor are crushed into a paste. Wine is spilled in dark puddles. The courtesans are huddled in corners, shivering from exhaustion and shame. You think the feast is over, don't you? You think the nightmare has peaked. You're wrong. The real psychological darkness descends now. Pope Alexander stands up again. He's not drunk. On the contrary, his eyes are frighteningly sober, sharp, and focused. He claps his hands. The hall suddenly goes deathly quiet. You can even hear the sizzling of the dying candles. The Pope gives the night's heaviest, most devastating order. He announces that the marriage must not remain only on paper. This union must be consummated before the Church, before the law, and before God. And it must happen right now. And it must be witnessed. Can you feel the blood freezing in Alfonso's veins? This is a prince of the House of Este, a man raised with the highest ideals of chivalry, honor, and duty. But now, he looks around. He is surrounded by Cesare's swordsmen, their hands hovering over their weapons. He has no chance to refuse, no place to run. The doors are bolted. The Pope wants the groom to prove his potency and the validity of the marriage with Lucrezia, but not once. The command is specific, exactly 3 times, and this act will not be behind closed doors, in the sanctity of privacy. The witnesses will stay. The doors to the adjoining chamber will remain open. Imagine the horror that washes over the hall. Even the most corrupt nobles hang their heads in disbelief. Even Cesare, that man who is a walking symbol of brutality, looks at his father with a flicker of surprise at the sheer audacity of this violation. Alfonso turns to Lucrezia. The woman is trembling violently now. She looks like a wounded bird caught in the shadow of a hawk. There is neither light nor resistance left in her eyes, only pure, devastating submission. Alfonso stands up, his legs heavy as lead. He takes Lucrezia by the hand and leads her to the adjoining room. It is a room normally used to host diplomats, but now it has been hastily turned into a makeshift bedroom. The doors are propped wide open. No privacy, no humanity, no dignity. Those inside the room have to fulfill this order in plain view of the witnesses standing in the doorway. That silent crowd, those judging yet simultaneously ashamed eyes. This is not a union of lovers. This is the shattering of 2 souls. In the main hall, witnesses pray in whispers, clutching their rosaries. Some weep silently into their sleeves. The air is thick with a collective shame that will stain this palace forever. Time stretches. Minutes feel like hours. And as the first grey light of dawn begins to bleed through the high windows, turning the candlelight pale, Pope Alexander raises his golden goblet one last time. It is done, he proclaims with satisfaction. The marriage has been sealed 3 times. There is no turning back. The legal bond is unbreakable. The room is now like the aftermath of a massacre. Empty wine bottles roll on the floor. People are sleeping in drunken stupors amidst the debris. Clergymen sit with their heads in their hands, unable to lift their faces. Look into the room one last time. Lucrezia is lying on the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. Her soul is not in that room anymore. It has fled to a place where no one can hurt her. And Alfonso. Alfonso sits on the edge of the bed, his face buried in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He is a warrior, a prince, but he is broken. He would have preferred to be defeated by the sword on a battlefield, bleeding out in the mud, than to endure the cold, calculated humiliation he experienced this night. Alfonso left Rome days later. He left silently, like a ghost. He never spoke of this night again to anyone, not to his father, not to his confessors. That night had killed something vital in him. Perhaps his pride, perhaps his joy of living, or perhaps his faith in God's representatives on earth. But the story did not stay locked within those stone walls. It couldn't. Secrets this dark have a way of leaking out. Whispers spread first to the servants, then to the streets of Rome, then to the merchants travelling north, and finally to all the royal courts of Europe. The Venetian envoy, a man who had seen everything, wrote a secret dispatch back to Venice. What happened in the Vatican surpassed even the darkest, most depraved dreams of the pagan emperors of ancient Rome. This event did not remain just the perversion of a single family. It became a turning point in the history of the world. Years later, angry men like Martin Luther would point to this night, to the Banquet of Chestnuts, as irrefutable proof of how corrupt, how rotten the heart of the church had become. One of the logs that fed the raging fire of the Protestant Reformation was the memory of what happened on that marble floor that night. And Lucrezia? She tried to build a new life for herself in Ferrara, far from her father's shadow. She became a patron of the arts. She supported poets. She did charity work. She wore hair shirts to repent. But those who saw her, those who looked into her eyes, always said the same thing. There was an indelible, ancient sorrow there, a shadow that never lifted. When she died at the young age of 39, her last recorded words were, "I am free at last." The Borgia's power, for all its terror, did not last either. Pope Alexander died suspiciously shortly after this event. Some say by the very poison he intended for another. Cesare, the terrifying warlord, was nothing without his father's power. He was chased out of Italy and was ambushed and killed in a desolate, rocky land in Spain, his body stripped naked and left for the wolves. Today, more than 500 years have passed since that night. Millions of tourists now wander those same halls of the Vatican, looking up at the ceilings, listening to the heroic stories told by tour guides. They see only the art, but you now know the truth. You know what lies beneath the history. Those marbles have a memory. If you stand very still, and if you listen carefully, you can still hear the clattering of those chestnuts, the forced, terrified laughter, and the soft, heartbreaking rustle of silk falling to the floor. History does not always write about victories and heroes. Sometimes it records silence, shame, and absolute darkness. We have only opened those dusty, forbidden pages and made the whispers heard to you. Here, in this court of opinion, the judge is you. Who is the victim? Who is the monster? Was this politics, or was it madness? The decision is yours. If you have walked with me through this nightmare, if you have stayed until the bitter end of this dark journey, prove it. Write the word whispered in the comments below. Let us know who among you dared to look into the deepest, darkest wells of history without blinking. Until we meet in the next whisper, stay in the dark.